Alright. Hello and welcome to the League of Legends Champion Spotlight. This episode, warding. Wards have their own special names called wards, and they're used to ward against your enemies by adding vision to your map. They are temporary, except for the pink ward. As you can see in your shop, there are multiple different wards to pick from. All of two of them. You have the free one and the control ward. However, there's a third one that most players don't know about, very well kept secret, called the Sightstone, which can be upgraded into the Ruby Sightstone for extra health and actual cooldown reduction to your items. Typically starts off with a Ruby Crystal. It's good for health on tanks especially. Much like when we play Leona. Now, just for sake of pacing, and because this video is roughly covering stuff that's been, made 2 years ago, we're going to go ahead and just buy ourselves a pair of Moby Boots for speed and a Deadman's Plate for cough speed. Now, the goal of this video is, of course, to show you and showcase the different ways you can ward. It's very important. But when you start off the game, it's very simple. Get your shit in gear. You move on out. And you start to decide for yourself, which places do I want to ward? Now, this being a practice tool game, I'm not going to show you clips and stuff like that. The good news is, I can show you speculations on where the best place to ward is, just by, using myself as a cough enemy jungler, so to speak. So, let's say you start off in mid lane, and you're trying to decide to yourself, where should I go? For top lane, here is a good basic warding position that gets scattered easily. Also here, if you're trying to avoid being ganked from the bottom side river. However, if you think ahead just a little bit, if I am on blue side, which I'll be there in a minute, you gotta try to ask yourself a couple questions. There are a couple junglers out there who can dash over walls, and including Kayn, technically speaking, where walls do not provide any form of protection whatsoever. Taking that into consideration, you can kind of guess that this location here could be dangerous if they're tanky enough, i.e. Hecarim, Sejuani. Besides that, you typically have to follow this area. Your goal for warding in the early game is, of course, to prevent junglers an easy path to gank you in the face, which, spoiler, if you're overextended all the way up to here, and the jungler has this much space to attack you, you're probably gonna die, unless you're a god, or Teemo. Taking that into consideration, notice how this area of the river is dark. But with one easy step and a click of a button, boom, you now have this location warded for approximately 1 minute, which you can kind of see right here. It's actually 2 minutes, 3-ish. Notice how this entire area is warded all the way down here towards the bottom half of the river. It's going to be very hard for you to miss an enemy jungler coming up to gank you. Unless, you're super focused and not paying attention like this. Oh look. Smashing minions, smashing minions. Even so, you're not overextended. Now let's say you're from the opposite direction. You're using this half, which is dark for me because I'm on the blue side. You can use this tri-bush as some form of protection. Notice how it's dark, easy access from the river. You can sneak up and use this wall to pin you in if you're overextended over here. From the red side, of course. Simply one click, boom, you'll now see anything coming. The only issue with this is that you're not going to be able to see past the radius of this spot, which does leave it dark. But the good news is you're not supposed to be overextended for the most part in top lane. Typically top lane is a solo lane where you just farm, and if you farm too well, you can be considered easy gold for an enemy jungler. But as long as you prevent that from happening and get used to your CSing habits, then, you should be fine. Now going on over to mid lane, this is a bit more dangerous. Now if we take a moment to just sit in front of our turret and look around for us, what are the vulnerabilities that we have available? Well, this is open, and dark. This is open as well. Here, here, and here is mirrored on the other side. Now, there's a couple questions you want to ask yourself. How far do I want to ward? It really depends on how willing you are to wander away from your lane. Typically, mid lane is a very high impact, very fast paced laning position because it's full of very bursty champions, very cheesy mechanics, such as Cho'Gath, for example, or Teemo. Fuck Teemo. And so you want to ask yourself which way is the best way to ward. Well, there's a couple ways. For blue side, specifically saying, if you want to ward up the top side here, you got a couple options. Here, it's pretty good. It's very basic. Gets you right back in the lane once you're done. You also have this location right here, which is also a very, very good location for what is called the pink ward or the control ward. Also, you might have noticed that the cursor turned from blue to green. When it turns to green, you know your ward is going to be in the bush. But as you can see, the lane is nicely lit up. Anybody coming from the top side, such as a pesky Lee Sin trying to hop over the wall, you'll see immediately. Moving on. I got a couple wards left. If you notice, like the trinket right here, you actually see the range on it. It also gives you 2 wards over the course of a 2-minute recharge. So anyway, same thing right here, and well, this one's kind of empty, so it's not a big deal. There's no bush here for you for blue side, so it's not a big deal. Keeping this little ward here actually cleans this up nicely. If we walk away, you'll see in a second. See, should provide you easy access. There's other ways to, of course, check that. Let's see, for example, if you use it towards the back side of the ward, you can see that kind of faint outline of the warding area. So keep that into consideration. This is a scrying orb. Just hit the plant. Wards a big old chunk. Moving on to bot lane. Bot lane's kind of special. It's a mirror of top lane in reverse, but that's not an important detail you should hang on to. But what you should note is that because it's a duo lane, you have twice as many wards to work with. The only problem is twice as many wards, twice as many threats. Because there's 2 people bot lane, you're going to have a lot to keep track of. For example, if you're busy laning with your Leona and let's say Caitlyn for some reason, you're going to be fighting another ADC and support combo unless you somehow get trolled by Volibear and Trundle using copy uniforms. Besides that, let's see. Now, during a panic situation, these two bushes, I should say, get warded pretty frequently because you're trying to maintain the amount of the flow of combat. Trundle dives into a bush and starts pegging you full of like rocks and shit. It's not okay. Having Sightstone as a support is actually very useful in this regard because you have the most ward coverage and vision control. It's very handy. That being said, though, if there's no horrible amounts of pressure going on, you can just move on. Let's say you push up the lane like so, and everything's fine and dandy, right? You got a big old wave taking care of business for you. You can kind of move on and do favors for other lanes. Now, you won't be moving this fast. This is just for demonstration. But besides that, there's this bush that you can use, and this bush. Now, again, think objectively here. When you think about vision control, there's different ways to look at it. The way I see it is you're trying to maintain observation or visibility over the entry points. You're not just simply going to slap a ward in the middle of the river like so. You're very much able to do so. Go for it. I don't care. But what you need to realize is when you walk away, see how limited that ward coverage is. Now, for example, let's say someone walks over here into the bush. You don't have visibility of that. And because you can only place 3 wards on the map, you need to kind of spread them out strategically, so to speak. So I have 2 wards again on my trinket. I'm going to show you in a second. So when it comes to maintaining the entrances of the enemy jungler, you kind of think to yourself, well, where the fuck can they come from? Just lost all the ad revenue there. Whatever. It's going to be this spot, very limited, but you can do one of these. You can kind of cover both. It's a bit sketchy because there's this bush here and it only covers half of this lane. But typically what I like to do is cover my wards right here to maintain visibility as far up into the river as possible. It also covers this entrance as well, which helps you kind of, predict when the jungler is coming over for your lane. And that way you don't specifically have to ward the tri-bush, unless, again, it is a jumpy champion. They come over here, dash, and, get through the tri-bush, which, again, you have a lot of wards, and if you're using the bot lane, go for it. Moving on. Now, this is a small secret and a secret to none. You can ward this bush easily, but beyond that, you can actually go ahead and ward a little deeper. This bush does provide a couple issues as a bot laner because you do have to maintain the bush. There's also a couple choices involved because some bushes do have the walls next to them. Of course they have walls next to them. So you have to ask yourself, what side of the wall do I want to maintain more? And usually speaking, it's not too difficult to decide. I'm going to slap down these wards again one more time just to give you an idea. Once we do this part though, I will begin the jungle segment, which is very difficult. It's not advanced, but it can strike a little bit of fear. It's pretty daunting to walk into the darkness. And that's just not a saying from somebody who's, from bronze. That goes all the way to platinum. But like I mentioned earlier, you can ward here as well, which gets you a little bit deeper and a little bit over this area too. Good news is, it still covers the river, but just not as much. A good amount. And like I was saying earlier, you can go even deeper. Right here is a good spot. Because you can actually track the enemy jungler. As you can look on the minimap, it covers a decent swath. It also helps with preventing them from going into the river or towards your enemy bot lane. Okay. Same deal goes with this bush, it's just mirrored. Now, as mentioning, there is a few important jungle locations that you should be warding. The ward we showed you earlier over in this area is mirrored where I am right now, so you can ward this spot. These are not very heavy trafficked areas, so the enemy jungler typically doesn't walk by them. And with the removal of the scrying buff from the birds, it makes warding the enemy jungle a whole lot easier, provided that you don't get ganked. But provided you don't get ganked, also means keeping good track of the enemy jungler, which is highly important. Okay, mirrored on the top side as well is also this bush over by red. I like to ward right here. Boom. And as when I walk away, you'll see in a second. You don't have complete vision over red buff, but you do have a very, very large amount of information from this area. And let's say, for example, you start the red buff. You immediately see him. You'll walk back in a second. A lot of junglers don't know this, but you can actually take buffs into bushes. Moving on. So that being said, I'm going to do a quick just run of the map and throw down some wards. And then I'm going to back to base and you guys can see exactly what it's like to have like good coverage. This next segment, of course, is going to be me doing each quadrant of the jungle because provided you have planning for the upcoming battles ahead based on your objective control can be very important. Gonna give that 60 seconds to complete. Also the note, if you're a support and you have Sightstone, absolutely pick up a scanner. Scanner can be found right over here. It's right on the front page at the very top. Scanners do this. Active scans an area for 6 seconds, warding against enemy hostiles with a small little red pinging, but it also reveals wards and disables them, so they turn off while you have it active. The reason why this is good for you is actually if you understand that the jungler or support or anybody for that matter is leaving wards, there's actually a small little icon. Once my wards expire, I will go ahead and throw some out there. However, point being, like I said, there's a small little decay. Now, if we look back, actually it doesn't show it for us, but besides that, there are little icons that pop up showing where wards have died, which kind of can let you guess what the pattern is for the enemy jungler or the enemy support or anybody where they're placing wards. It shows their habits. Alright, my wards are deactivated. You can notice that the one is still here. That's a vision ward. They last until they're dead. Alright, we're going to reset to mid lane, and you're going to see in just a hot second. Alright, now if we just spin the wheel and you take a quick guess, like let's say for example, you are defending, and the enemy is taking top and mid. Well, if you're defending those locations, anything in between would probably want to be warded. So let's give that a whirl. This one can be a bit difficult, because there's this section right here which can be kind of cloaked, but if you do it just right, there we go. It's a good little area and it covers as much as possible. Next to that, of course, is going to be this position, and it really becomes down to whether or not you have to decide between mid and top, but you can ward here or here, depending on which tower they're working on. It's very important because the more vision you have, the more ability you have to predict your enemy movement and actually win team fights. It's kind of strange how that works. Vision equals team fight ability. But if I walk away for a second, you'll see just how much we're covering with just 2 wards. You can even see on the minimap exactly how much darkness there is left. That being said, potentially you could ward here or here, as I mentioned earlier, these 3 positions, to cover up the Gromp in the blue area. This kind of helps a lot. Again, it's all a matter of circumstance. And same goes for bot side. I'm going to throw a ward just for demonstration, actually. Okay, using myself as a ward real quick, you can kind of see how much we're covering. Now, if your teammates are actually right here, you really have to decide whether or not you want to throw one right here. And just see just exactly how much you're covering. There's very little darkness. These areas are towards your turret and base, which allows you to, feel a bit safer. They're towards your retreat. While being an advanced option towards the enemy, you can actually cover just a bit more. Again, it is very much on your decision which side you want to cover based on the situation. If the enemies are filing through here, you would throw a ward down here. If they're on the other side or retreating, you would throw it over here, of course. Alright, that being said, I'm going to back and do the right side. And my ward's refreshed. I use the scanner just to give you guys an example. Alright, so reset back to mid. Now, imagine this. Mid lane and bot lane are being pushed in. There's a pesky Sivir just chomping her way through minions and bombing your turrets. Now, notice how much of this is dark. It's a good portion of it. With your jungler actively warding, perhaps you can get away with a few more wards in the area, but that being said, this is a practice tool and you can't see shit. But what this should demonstrate is the power of just one person, or rather one support, using all 3 wards. Hey, free gold. Alright. For example, if they're going from mid to top, mid to bottom, you want to be able to cover the high traffic areas. Mostly meaning right here. Right here. And either here or here. Depending. But with me as a ward, you can kind of see just how much we're covering, which is a great deal. And with your jungler or friends helping, you can actually cover this area as well. But noting just how much and how your enemy is moving, you can really decide, because it seems like the red side always seems a little bit bigger with a few more twists and turns. Blue side is always a bit more compact for some reason. That being said, I'm going to throw down a ward just for demonstration. Okay. You can see that everything except for the red is warded, which isn't too important. This is potentially dangerous, of course, but with enough friendly movement, you should be able to cover it pretty easily. Again, the red side of both sides of the map are kind of expansive, so you can get a little lost and lose track of your enemy, but provided you have enough friendlies around and predicting their mobility, the enemy mobility, you can kind of fix that. Actually, now that I mention it, you can actually use this to your advantage on the offense as well. If you want to predict where the enemy is coming while they're defending, warding here, here, and here towards their base can be very advantageous. You can actually read their movements pretty well, might even set up a fun bush, and win a team fight just from pure surprise. Because again, the team that doesn't ward doesn't expect what they can't see. And what's better than not expecting Leona stun, Cho'Gath eats, feasts, I don't know, Warwick ults, Orianna ults, whatever disgusting wombo combo your team can come up with. Alright, I'm going to back and get one more demonstration for the other sides. It should be mirrored, of course. These are mirrored. But I will show you a quick warding for Dragon and a warding for Baron, just to be quick about it. And this is from the perspective of blue side. These are mirrored for the most part. Anyways, blue side to Baron kind of looks like this. When you're on the offensive, because, Baron is towards the red side, you want to ward here. You don't want to ward inwards, or else you will block yourself. Warding right on this little edge gives you a lot of vision. Warding here gives you just a little bit extra vision on this area. Because you gotta remember, these walls do block vision, of course, and that's a no-brainer. But at the same time, using that to your advantage, understanding it, really helps. A little extra vision is just that much more reaction time. And if we pop ourselves over, you can see exactly how much we're covering. This area is warded nice and bright. This area is nice and bright as well. You can it's really handy to expect, like, I don't know, let's say Tryndamere, Hecarim, some other garbage jungler vaulting towards you at Mach speed, Rammus even. But you're busy over here beating Baron's face in, and bam, whatever you see, you can expect it. Use this bush maybe. Tuck in towards Baron. Whatever. That jungler trying to 1v5 is going to regret it. Alright, now that being said, if you're using the red side towards Baron, of course, you want to ward Baron itself. I'll show you. But when you enter, and you're already fighting, want to ward right here. Whoops. Right on the edge. Get yourself as much vision as possible. Because if you ward towards the center here, you will block most of this off. And of course, right here. Again, you want to be mindful of the walls. There's a lot to block. But if we walk away for a second, you'll see just how much we've covered. Both their entrances are warded very effectively. You could go as far as doing top lane, but it's kind of excessive based if you have minions in the way or not. And if you're doing Baron, you better be ahead. I'm going to back real quick for more wards, and we'll do the dragon. Sorry, opening shop is kind of a habit. But besides that... Alright, now if you're warding blue from blue side on dragon, you can kind of see just how dark everything is, right? And that's always daunting. Just a point I was making earlier. Now from blue side, if you're assaulting dragon, you can kind of see just how dark the enemy jungle is. Now again, if you have this ward here, or in those any other mirrored locations, it's going to stay until it's dead. Very useful. No one uses this bush. It's kind of sad. Anyways, like no one will walk into it unless they do it on purpose. Accidentally, never. Purposefully, maybe. But then again, they'd have to be checking for it. It's very valuable to understand how the jungler is rotating. If they're doing scuttle after their blue buff, yada yada yada. Anyways, looking from dragon from blue side, you have to cover this entrance and this entrance, which is, you know, mirrored on the other side. These two spots as well. Now, if you're working from red side towards dragon, it's a little bit different. First and foremost, you should always ward the back of Baron or dragon. I didn't show you over by Baron because these two locations here and here were actually a mistake. Always ward behind dragon, always ward behind Baron. Always. No exceptions. But if we sit on dragon, we notice how much that we're covering. The only things left to cover are going to be this bush here. Which again, you could be a little bit reckless because it is blue side's offensive side. And the edge right here. This kind of gives you a bit more vision. But if we look in review, we have a lot of vision. Right, that being said, the only thing left to cover, I think I covered already, is these locations here in the river. When you're counter warding, and you're trying to make sure you keep track of the enemy jungler, you want to cover your jungle entrances. If you have nothing to do, and you have no active wards whatsoever, ward the river. If all else fails, ward the river. Anyways, that being said, I'm a level 7 Leona with no name. Have a great day.